Hello friends, welcome to my channel Power BI Skills. Through this channel, I share with my viewers a lot of tips, tricks, and best practices in Power BI in order to develop stunning dashboard. In our today's video, I'm going to cover a very important concept of time intelligence functions in Power BI. With time intelligence DAX function, we can do a lot of calculations, aggregations, and comparisons basis specific time period. Let's understand this in detail. Before we proceed further, I would request you to please like and share my videos in case you believe that you are getting benefits through these videos. In case you are new to my channel, then I would request you to please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon so that you will get the notification of all my future videos. Your like and subscribe will motivate me to make more such useful contents for my viewers. Let's get started. What is time intelligence? In Power BI, the time intelligence represents the formulas and functions related to specific time periods, or we can say dates. In other words, the time intelligence functions support calculations to compare and aggregate data over time periods, supporting days, months, quarters, and years. We can categorize time intelligence text functions into three categories: aggregation category, time comparison category, and information category. Let's understand these categories in detail. So aggregation categories. In aggregation categories, we have to calculate the aggregate value for a specific period. For example, I have to calculate the total sales for a particular month, or maybe I have to calculate the quarter to date or year to date sales, revenue, or profit numbers. So these are the examples of aggregate function. So we have total MTD function, total QTD function, where like we calculate the quarter to date values, similarly year to date values. We have closing balance month, where we have to calculate the closing balance for a particular month. So these are the few examples which we'll cover in detail. Then we have a next category of time comparison function, where we have to calculate the current month data or a current period data with the prior period. So these DEX function used to compare the current month period with the prior period. Examples are same period last year DEX function, DATEADD, which is a very important DEX function, dates between, and parallel period. Then the third category is informative DAX function. So here we can get the information like end of the month, end of the quarter, end of the year, start of the month. So this these function would provide us the specific information. So if we have given a particular date, then we have to calculate what is the end of the month compared to the date which has been given. For example, let's say we have given 14th February is the date, then at the end of the month for 14th February would be the 28th of February. Similarly, for 14th February, the end of the quarter would be 31st of March, so on. So let's understand in detail about how these functions works in Power BI with the help of example. So friends, this is the example dataset we are going to use in our today's video, where we'll be calculating the 13 DEX function which I had discussed just before. So we have a date table and the corresponding sales done in each of the date. One thing I would like to inform you that one of the prerequisite for utilizing the time intelligence feature in Power BI is that you must have a running date table in your dataset. So without the date table, we won't be able to utilize the time intelligence feature in Power BI. Let's upload this dataset in Power BI and start creating measures basis the DAX function which we have discussed just before. I have uploaded the example dataset in Power BI. Now if I go to view and if I click on data, so you can see that this dataset is now appearing on the right hand side, and we can also go to the data view and see our data appearing here. So I'll go to the report view first, and let me create a simple table basis the dataset which is available with us. For that, I'll go to new visual and I would start dragging the data in this visual, and I'll change this visual to a table visual. Now I have a table which is created basis the dataset I have. I'll just drag this table a bit. Okay, so now this is the table we have created basis the data set we have. Let's first create a measure from the total MTD function. So for that, I'll go to new measure. I'll name this measure as sales, sales MTD, and my function would be total MTD. Here the syntax would be will have expression and date. So I will add the expression sum sales values, and then I would add date references. So for that I would use the column date dot date, and I will hit enter. So now we have a MTD sales value calculated basis the total MTD measure. I will drag this measure to my table. Okay, so if we talk about the MTD values, the MTD stands for month to date, and this is the cumulative value of the monthly sales. So let's say in this example, on 4th of January, we have made a sales of 5,000, and then on 12th of January, we have made sales of 12,000, and 13th, we have made a sales of 3,000, and so on in the month of January. Now, MTD sales value is calculating the cumulative value. On 12th of July, the MTD sales value would be 5 plus 12, 17. Then 13 would be 17 plus 3, 20. And then on 19th, it would be 20 plus 15, 35, and so on. If you scroll down to, let's say, January month end, so this is the MTD value, or this is the total sales done during the month of January, which is 65,000. Similarly, for February month, the cumulative value would be calculated, and if we go down to the end of February, we'll see 45,500 is the total sales done in the month of February. Okay, so this is about the calculation of MTD values with the help of our time intelligence DEX function, which is total MTD. Now, similarly, we can calculate the quarter to date values as well by using the formula total QTD. For that, we will we'll create another measure. I'll go to new measure. Here the syntax would be same, but first let me write the name of this measure, sales quarter to date, or I would rename this as quarterly sales. My function would be total QTD, and again the syntax would be same, sum sales column bracket close comma, then we have to give the reference of the date column, sales, and date column dot date. I'll close the bracket, I'll hit enter. Now you can see we have another measure which is created for quarterly sales. I'll drag this measure to my table. And to make it simple, I remove the day column from this table so that we can see all the information easily. Okay, now I have the quarterly sales information is appearing here. So you can see quarterly sales is the cumulative sales value for the quarter. Let's say in the month of January, the total sales done was 65,000. In the month of February, the total sales done was 45,500. But if we are talking about the quarter to date or cumulative quarterly sales, then this would be 65 plus 45,500, which is 1,10,500. And in the month of March, the total sales were 59,000. Then my cumulative sales for the quarter one would be 1,69,500. Similarly, for quarter two, the sales would be cumulative, and on June end, my total quarterly sales for quarter two would be 1,96,000, and so on. So this is how we can calculate the QTD values, just like the MTD values, and now we can calculate the YTD values as well with the same total YTD function. For that, we'll create a new measure. I would name this as yearly sales. My function would be total YTD, and then same, I would first calculate the sum of sales, and then I will give the date references, and this would calculate the YTD sales values, and I will drag this here. Now, just like MTD and QTD, in YTD, the sales values would be cumulated for each month till the year end. So since this is a calendar year, so you can see every month the sales numbers are added with the prior months, and if you see in the month of December, we have a total sales for the year 2023, which is 9,92,000. and again from January 2024, this is again started and it is getting accumulated on monthly basis. Since there is no data in the month of May and onwards for 2024, so this is showing the same value, YTD value, for the remaining months. So the next function which I'm going to cover is closing balance month function. So this function would give me the result of sales made on the last day of the month. Let's say if on the last day of the month we have made a sales of 5,000 US dollars, so that would appear. For example, let's say on 31st of January we have made a sales of 5,000 US dollars, then that would appear here. But if there is no information, no data on the last day of the month, then this would appear as zero. It means no sales made on the last day of the month. Let's calculate this. I'll create a new measure. I would name this as last day sales, and I will use closing balance month DAX function. I would use sum sales, and I would mention date, and I would hit enter. So we have a new column, last day sales. I would drag this column here in the table. Now you can see we have information appearing in the month of March, which is 25,000, in the month of June, September, October, and rest of the month there is no information appearing. This is because there is no sales done on the last day in the month of January, February, April, May, and so on. Wherever we are getting this amount, let's say in the month of March, we have 25,000 US dollar sales done on 31st of March. So we can validate this by going to our Excel template and see. You can see on 31st of March, we have made a sales of 25,000 US dollars. Similarly, if we can say in the month of June, 30th of June, we had made a sales of 45,000 US dollars, and so on. So this is the closing day balance of the month. Like on the last day, whatever transactions done, that would be captured with the help of this text function. So these, in the same manner, we can calculate the closing balance quarter and closing balance year as well with the same function. The syntax would be same. It's just that we'll have to use the DAX function closing balance quarter and closing balance year. So these are the few examples of aggregation category of time intelligence functions which we have covered. Now let's move on to our next category, which is the comparison or time comparison category of time intelligence DAX function. The next function I'm going to cover is same period last year function. So in this function, we'll be able to compare our current year's number with the previous year number. For example, let's say in this table, in the month of January 2024, we have made a sales of 68,500. Let's say if I want to compare this with the prior year sales of the same month. So in the month of January 2023, we had made a sales of 65,000 US dollars. So I can compare this. So how can we do that with the help of this text function? So let me calculate a new measure. I would name this as prior year sales. For that, I'll be using the calculate function, calculate, and then I would mention some sales. Now, in addition to the calculate function, I would use my DAX function same period last year, and here I would give the date reference. So the time comparison function will always be combined with the calculate DAX functions to get the results. So I would hit enter. I will drag this new column to my table. Okay, now you can see in the month of January 2024, my sales is 68,500, but in January 2023, my sales was 65,000. Similarly, in the month of February 2024, my sales is 1,34,500, whereas in the year 2023, same month, my sale was 45,500, and so on. You can see in the 2023 year, this column is blank because we do not have any data for the year 2022. So that's why it is appearing as blank. So this is very simple and very effective. You can do current year numbers comparison with the prior year. And you can add another measure and calculate the difference as well by subtracting your current year sales with the prior year sales column, and then you will get the difference or variance column as well. Okay, let's move on to our next very important DAX function, which is DATESADD. So for that I will create a new measure, and I would mention this as prior, or I would say 3 months prior sales. So in the previous function, we had calculated my comparison of my current year, or I would say, yeah, current year sales with the prior year sales. Let's say if I want to compare my current month sales with the sales done 3 months prior to the period or to the current month, or maybe 6 months prior to the current month. This can be done with the help of DAX function DATESADD. So let's say I would first use calculate sum sales, and here I would add my function DATEADD, and here I would first mention my dates, which is sales and date column, and here I want to, or I'll have to give the intervals. Let's say if I want to compare my current month sales with the sales done 3 months prior, then I would mention -3, and then in the interval I'll have to mention month because we are doing this comparison basis the months, and I'll hit enter. And if I drag this column here, now you can see that in the month of April 2023, my sales was 56,000, whereas 3 months prior to April, it means in the month of January, my sales was 65,000. So this is comparison of the current month versus 3 months prior sales. Similarly, in the month of May, we can compare the number with the February month sales. And similarly, for subsequent months, we'll do it in the same manner. With DATEADD function, we have a flexibility. We can mention the interval period. So let's say if in this measure, instead of let's say 3 months, I want to do the comparison of 6 months. So I want to compare current month with 6 months prior data. So I would, instead of 3, I would mention -6. And now you can see that in the month of July, we are comparing the July month data with the January month. The prior months are appearing as blank because there is no data which is 6 months prior to these months starting January till June. We have 6 months prior data only for July because we have a data from January 2023 onwards. That's why we are seeing the comparison. Similarly, if we want to see the comparison of the current month with or comparison of the given month with maybe 3 months ahead of data. So let's say if I'm having the January data, January 2023 data, and I want to compare it with April 2023 data. So instead of prior data, I was I have to compare it with 3 months ahead data. So instead of -3, I would write just 3 and I would hit enter. Now you can see in the month of January, my sales were 65,000, whereas in the month of April, which is 3 months ahead of January to 2023, my sales were 56,000. So this is how we can do the comparison with the help of DATEADD DEX function. So let me just keep it as -3 only and hit enter. Now there is another option available in the DATEADD DEX function. Now instead of month, we have to compare the data with prior quarter. So maybe we have to mention it in quarters. So let's say I want to compare it with the same month in the previous quarter. So I would write -1, and instead of month, I would mention quarter and I'll hit enter. I'll get the same result because 3 months prior, or I would say 1 quarter prior, is same thing. So I can write my DATEADD DEX function in this manner as well. Okay, so let's move on to our next DEX function, which is a parallel period DEX function. So parallel period DEX function would help us comparing our current month data with the period which is parallel to the same month or same period in the prior year. So let me show you with the help of example. So for that I'll create a new measure. I would mention this as previous quarter sales. I'll use calculate function sales, and here I would write parallel period, and here I would have to mention the date, which is date column, and I will have to mention, let's say, the time interval. I would say 1 quarter prior, and here I would mention quarter. I will hit enter. I will drag this here in the table, and let me expand this table a bit. Okay, so you can see in the previous quarter sales, you are getting the sales for the total previous quarter. So this is the difference of DATEADD DEX function and the parallel period DEX function. In DATEADD, if you mention the parameters like -1 and quarter, you would get the sales number for the previous quarter of the same month only. Let's say if we are saying that in the month of April we want to see the sales of previous quarter, then we will get the sales of previous quarter of first month only, which is January, right? Similarly, the second month of the quarter two is May, and in the month of May, my sales were 63,000. But with date add function, we will get the second month of the previous quarter sales, which is 45,500. But in parallel period, if we are saying that we want to compare it with the previous quarter number, then we will get the total of previous quarter, which is the total sales for the entire Q1, which is 1,69,500. I hope you understood the difference between date add, where we are getting the data for a specific month only, but in parallel period, we will get the data for a particular quarter or a year or a month if we are giving the reference accordingly. So instead of in parallel period, instead of quarter, if I mention a month in the parameters, so So let's say instead of quarter, I have mentioned the interval as month. Then you can see I will be getting the sales number of the previous month. So in the month of February, I will be getting the sales number for January month. Similarly, for March, we'll get it for February and so on. But if we change this to quarter instead of month, if we select the quarter, then we'll get the sales number for the previous entire quarter. And if instead of quarter, if we select year, then we get the sales number for the entire previous year. I hope you understood the difference between parallel period and date add. So I'll change this to quarter only. Okay. Now we'll cover another most important DEX function, which is dates between. So let's say if I have to calculate the sales number for a customized period, let's say starting from February 15th till say 13th of June, or let's say 10th of June, how can I calculate that? So that would be done with the help of specific DEX function, which is dates between, where we'll have to give the parameters of sales start date and the close date. So for that, I'll be using a card, but let me first create that measure. For that, I'll go to new measure. I would, let's say, name this as specific period sales. So for that, I would use first calculate sum, and I would be totaling the sales data, and here I would use my second DAX function, which is dates between. And here I will have to use another, first I will have to give the reference of my dates. So for that, I will have to give the reference of my dates column. And then I'll have to give the start date. For start date, I'll have to first use the date function, and then we'll have to give the date reference in this particular format only. Let's say year would be 2020, 2023. Let's say I want to calculate the sales value starting from 15th of February. So I'll write my start date in this particular manner, and similarly I'll use date function and I'll write my end date. Let's say I want to calculate the sales value from the period starting from 15th February till 10th of July 2023. So July would be my 7th month, and and day would be 10th. So this is the period I have entered here, which is 15th February 23 till 10th July 23, because I want to calculate the sales value for this period. I will hit enter. Now I have this measure ready, because the output of this measure would be one single value. Let me use a card here, card visual, which is a new visual. I would go to new visual and I would enter card, and I would drag my specific period measure here. So here you can see the value which is appearing here is 304K. So this is for the period of 15th February till 10th July, the sales value of this period. To validate this, I'll go to my table, and I will go to 15th February data, and I will have to calculate the sales value till 10th of July, which is here. You can see 3,03,500, and in approximate value this is 3,04,000, which is appearing, which is absolutely correct. So this is the function which we can use where we have to calculate the specific values for a particular date range. So we can use dates between. So we have covered so far the aggregate functions, which is total MTD, total QTD, total YTD, and closing balance month. And then we have discussed about time comparison function, which is same period last year, date add, dates between, and parallel period. Now the third category is the informative functions. So let's say we have dates available, and let's say I want to calculate what would be the last day of the month basis the date which is appearing here, or what would be the last day of the quarter. So that information can be calculated through these DAX functions. For that, I'll create a new measure. Let's say I would write this month and date, and I would mention end of month DAX function. So here I would give the reference of my dates. So for that, I will go to my sales data table and I'll give the reference of the date column, and I'll hit enter. And yeah, if I drag this column here, you can see that for January, the month end date would be 31st of January. Similarly, for February, it is 28th of February, and so on. So for each month, any date which is mentioned for a particular month, we can calculate the month and date with the help of DAX function. Similarly, we can calculate the end of quarter. Let me just change this only. Instead of month and date, let me write this as quarter end date. And instead of end of month, I would write end of quarter. and I'll just hit enter. Now you can see for the quarter end date, for first quarter it would be 31st of March, for second quarter it would be 30th of June, for third quarter it would be 30th of September, and so on. So this is how, basis any random date, we can calculate month end date, quarter end date, or similarly the year end date as well. And in the same manner, we can calculate the start of the month date as well. So let's say if we want to calculate the month beginning date, so instead of quarter end, I would write month beginning date. Then here, instead of the text function end of month, quarter, or year, I would write start of the month, and I'll hit enter. And you will get the month beginning date basis any random date which is available in the table. And similarly, you can calculate start of the quarter and start of the year as well. So these are few of the examples of the informative function where we can calculate month end, month beginning, quarter end, quarter beginning, and so on, these kind of dates with the help of our Power BI DAX function. So far we have covered 13 DAX functions, which are most frequently used DAX function, which are time intelligence based DAX function in Power BI. I hope you have learned and understood how we can do our calculations basis time intelligence DAX functions, and you will be able to apply the same in your work assignments. In case you have any doubts or questions, you can reach out to me by sending your queries in the comment field, and I will revert on your queries as soon as possible. In case you want me to create a video on any of the topics of Power BI, you can send your request through comments field, and I will try to create the video as soon as possible. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.